Hello there, I'm Cody the Coin Raptor, and in today's video, we're going to bring another ARK Invest Bitcoin monthly report. This one is for the month of September, so we're going to go ahead and break it down. I'm going to talk to you guys about what's going on in this report, and then I'm going to go ahead and summarize my thoughts and feelings on it. But before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button, be sure to hit like, and be sure to follow me on X. So we're going to go ahead and get started as we usually do here with the market summary. Now, they previously talked about the fact that Bitcoin has been unable to break above its 200-week moving average at 27,300 and its short-term holder cost basis as well at 27,800. And they say that a break above these resistance levels would validate the bull market. So this is something I've been talking about quite a bit and mentioning the fact that we're waiting to see that break above 28K. We want to see that break above 28K and a confirmation of that breakout, and that would definitely signify that the short-term momentum is back in the hands of the bulls. They also mentioned the fact that the long-term holders of Bitcoin accounted for 76% of circulating supply. Okay, this is very important, as I've pointed out myself, the fact that the amount of circulating supply right now has reached levels not seen since 2010. That is absolutely fundamental to Bitcoin's underlying case as an asset that accumulates over time, as a gold stand-in, a digital gold. And they also go ahead and talk about the issues with macroeconomic challenges. This is something that ARK has frequently commented on. If you guys have seen any of my other ARK videos about the monthly report that they give out, these macroeconomic challenges are usually, I would say, the bear case and represent some short-term problems with the economy around the world. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit more in the last couple of slides. And then I also want to talk about the catalyst of potentially a Bitcoin futures ETF, or an Ether futures ETF and a Bitcoin spot ETF. So they're saying here that the sentiment seems to be turning positive now for the idea that the approval of a Ether futures ETF will happen and a Bitcoin spot ETF will happen sometime soon. Okay, so this is honestly, this is another good reason for a bull case here. And this is part of the key takeaways here. So we're going to go ahead and go through the other metrics as well to take a look at. Now, normally they list these as either bullish or bearish in ARK's view. Now, the only thing that's changed so far is transaction volume. That's gone down month over month by about 5.3%. So that has been, in their view, bearish. That's the only thing that's changed so far. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on to the valuation metrics. Not really many changes here. We're noticing that the market cost basis has relatively stayed the same here at about 20,000 or so. And this is important because this is going to be a very strong support level for Bitcoin if it ever goes through to that level. Next, they're going to talk about the technical analysis and specifically underlying some of the underlining some of the supports that we've seen here. So the Bitcoin price is kind of floating right now. It hasn't really established a strong trend yet. We're kind of moving more sideways at the moment, and they're talking about the fact that the price closed below the 200-week moving average, as we said before, 27,300, and then also below the short-term holder cost basis as well. And both of these are going to be strong resistance points, both the short-term holder realized price and then the 200-week moving average. That's something we look at quite a bit when we do chart TA. Where's the 200-week moving average? Where's the 200-day moving average? I like to look at both of those two things. And right now, it's looking as though that tends to be some strong resistance. Now, they also say that the downside support, as we mentioned before, is going to be that Bitcoin cost basis, about 20,000. And I've pointed out before that Bitcoin doesn't normally, this late in the cycle, go down to that realized price. Okay, so normally that's incredibly strong support. But in order to be bullish, we have to see Bitcoin come above both of those two resistance points and then make a strong breakout. Next, they talk about the long-term holders being 76% of the total circulating supply. Okay, now this is something that is rare. Okay, this is something that we haven't seen in all of Bitcoin's history. So we've tracked it. They've looked at the charts here, and going all the way back to 2010, which they don't have data about. This is the highest level it has been at. Okay, so it's about 76%. And the reason why this is important is because long-term holders are much less likely to sell in times of extreme panic. They are much less likely to sell. Many of these holders are waiting for Bitcoin to go back to the all-time high, or at least close to the all-time high. In fact, we've seen that in the past when you get close to this level of almost 80% here, which happened back in 2015 and 2016. We can see here that it actually kind of peaked at these levels and then went down dramatically after that. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin, the price spiked up. And then we saw that it continued to go up here in that January of 2017 and then 2018 kind of bull market. And we saw that hit a low of about 55%. Okay, so it's very, if you take a look at this chart, it's possible that we'll get the same kind of reaction in which people will not sell until after the Bitcoin price has gone up significantly. Next, they talk about the Bitcoin profit loss ratio. Okay, so they're basically saying here that the number of transactions that were in profit were very comparable to the number of transactions that were in loss. And these levels kind of hovered around that 1-to-1 ratio. And so far, we're starting to see, according to them, this is bullish, okay, because we're actually starting to see a little bit of we're starting to see a little bit of profit. Actually, it's just about 1.13. Okay, so 1.13. So there's slightly more people in profit than there are in loss. All right, and this is actually pretty interesting because if Bitcoin holds support here, you're probably going to wind up seeing this number go up, and especially if we can actually get just a little bit of a bump in the price, then we can actually start to see this climb and build up. Normally, this is much higher in a bull market. It's usually above that 10 level, and that's normally what you would see in a bull market. We have a long way to go before we hit 10, but this would suggest that there is a lot more room left to run to the upside, so there's more risk to the upside here for the Bitcoin price. Next, they talk about the realized profits, and the realized profits right now have hit this kind of gray box they've outlined here of about 0.01%. All right, so this is like a yearly low. And you can see that these levels also kind of signify a bear market bottom. We see here at about January or in between January of 15 and January of 16, we had a bear market bottom. And here about January of 2019, there's a bear market bottom. And then here at almost like say November 2022, that was kind of close to a bottom. So what they're saying here is that this is bullish because we could potentially be approaching another Bitcoin bottom. Next, they want to talk about the regulation of Binance specifically, and they're saying that Binance's share of global crypto asset spot trading volume has dropped, and it has dropped from about 64% down to where it is right now to about 42%. And this is just a huge drop for Binance. Okay, so Binance right now has kind of been under siege by the SEC. They filed charges against Binance, and Binance is losing its share of the market. Now, I'm not entirely sure about where this market share is going because they don't kind of layer it up against some other exchanges. But my guess is that you're probably getting more volume share being taken by like Coinbase and Gemini and DeFi platforms as well. You're probably getting more of those through those, crypto.com entirely. You could get some more market share from that as well. But we're starting to see a collapse of the Bitcoin, of the Binance share of the market, okay? And they're actually starting to say that's bullish because a gradual decline in market share could be the best case for Binance. Maybe it would help their case a little bit by saying, hey, we don't actually control a large share of the market anymore, and so we're not a huge risk to customers. Next, they move on to the macroeconomic challenges that we're facing right here. Okay, so most of these are going to be bearish because ARK has been very bearish on the macroeconomic picture for the last year or year and change. Okay, and part of the reason for that is because the Fed funds rate keeps increasing. Okay, we've talked about this quite a bit. But as the Fed funds rate increases, then we're seeing that we're having less market liquidity, okay, in the markets right now. And it's very counterproductive to Bitcoin. Okay, so as rates rise, Bitcoin tends to get pressure, selling pressure on it. And I've made multiple videos on how the Fed funds rate affects Bitcoin. So I definitely recommend you guys to check them out. So they're saying that, of course, elevated for longer than the market anticipated. And so that's going to be a bearish thing working against Bitcoin. They also go ahead and point out the fact that the gasoline futures are contradicting the spot WTI crude oil prices, okay? So the reason why they're pointing this out is because this, according to ARK's interpretation of this data, they're saying that gasoline prices are basically going to come down, okay, because the futures are pointing towards a downwards move, and then that will reduce gas prices, and then consumers will have more spending money, which will then turn drive the economy. Next, they talk about the dollar. Okay, so the dollar, and specifically talk about the trade-weighted dollar, has increased 44% since 2011. We've talked about the strength of the dollar multiple times. The strength of the dollar shows fear. Okay, so as people are fearful, not in the U.S., but also around the world as well, then the dollar tends to strengthen, and that also provides a downward pressure on Bitcoin as well. So as a strengthening dollar does tend to hurt Bitcoin. They're viewing this as neutral currently. Okay, so what we would like to see, however, is a move down in the strength of the dollar in order to give Bitcoin a little bit of breathing room. Next, they talk about the leading economic indicator, and that is specifically the reason why they're talking about this is because it's pointing towards a recession. They talk about the leading economic indicator, which is basically it's an indicator that includes average work week, jobless claims, Institute of Supply Management, new orders, and interest rate spreads. Okay, so that's this black line here. We're seeing it dip sharply like it did back in 2020. However, you take a look at this green line, and this is very interesting. You have the green line here, which is the U.S. real GDP year-over-year growth, and we're actually starting to see that's positive. Okay, normally when you get these major recessions, you do tend to see the GDP go down. Okay, so we've seen here in about 2001, it came very close. It did not go negative, however, but you go to 08, 09, and then 2020, we've seen a large decrease in GDP and GDP going negative. Okay, we haven't seen that just yet, and I'm not ready to predict negative GDP growth, because if we do get negative GDP growth, we're going to wind up getting a recession. So far, that's not what we've been seeing in the data, not what I've been seeing in the data. I'm still looking through GDP estimates have actually come in higher. And in fact, they say the forecast for real GDP growth is 2.1% year over year in 2023. Okay, and I know they view this as bearish personally, but ARK is saying that GDP is going to come down, that GDP growth is going to come down, and it's going to actually wind up turning negative. Now, again, I personally, I interpret this a little bit differently than they do, but in their view, this is bearish. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the Bitcoin monthly report. And again, we'll come back over here to the summary. So the whole idea here is the fact that Bitcoin continues to strengthen. Bitcoin continues to get stronger. We're seeing long-term holder Bitcoin accumulation. In fact, in some metrics, I've seen it go above 80%, in fact. And we're still seeing strong resistance from the Bitcoin price. So we talked about the 200-week moving average and that short-term holder basis. And that being said, the sentiment does seem to be turning positive because of the regulatory environment and the fact that you're starting to see some wins against the SEC. Okay, like what happened with Ripple and the Ripple court case. That's definitely very positive. And the fact that we may wind up seeing a Bitcoin spot ETF sooner than later. I think that's all the bullish narrative right there, okay? And then on the other side, the bearish narrative is the macroeconomic picture. And as the macroeconomy is deteriorating or is predicted to deteriorate in the future, that it's not very bullish for Bitcoin. So this is kind of a normal kind of ARK Invest report. We've seen similar things happen where they say, okay, well, Bitcoin is strong right now, but the macro economy is very weak. And so we have kind of a rocky road ahead. Okay. And I do tend to agree with that. However, I don't think we're going to see a major recession, even if we do see a recession, and Bitcoin will still come out on the other side very strong. Okay. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it, guys. If you could hit that subscribe button, if you can hit that like button or share, definitely would appreciate that as well. Follow me on X for the most important information, the most up-to-date information, and I will catch you guys in the next video.